My name is Marla Garcia, and today I'll be talking about the contributions of Africa to science. Despite the country's great struggle against slavery, sharecropping, and the Jim Crow era, early African Americans made countless contributions to science. Many treatments we use today originated and were discovered by people throughout Asia and Africa. Before the European invasion of Africa, medicine in what is now Egypt, Nigeria, and South Africa was more advanced than the medicine in Europe. Many of the treatments came from the medical use of plants that were found and available in the environment. For example, plants with salicylic acid were used as a remedy for pain, and it is what is now known as aspirin, as well as choline for diarrhea. Furthermore, medical procedures such as vaccinations, autopsies, limb traction, broke bone setting, bullet removal, brain surgery, skin grafting, and filling out dental cavities were performed in ancient Africa before they were performed in Europe. Africa was also the first to perform section, and they discovered anesthesia and tissue cauterization. In addition, among countless other medical contributions, they performed surgeries under antiseptic conditions, generally when this concept was only beginning to develop in Europe. Now, Jocelyn will explain more about how Africa has contributed to technology.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Barajas, and I will be working on the T of STEM. Technology is slowly growing in Africa, but is very difficult to grow quickly because of the shortage of resources. Technology started around 70,000 years ago in South Africa, where they made the first stone-tipped tools. Early African ancestors also made the first abstract art, jewelry, with shell beads, and used the pressure flasking technique. The pressure flasking technique was used by heating to make stone sharp, pointy arrows. Clocks were made with the moving water, and sundial-like clocks were used. They used many weapons for hunting, like arrows, knives, and axes, which were usually made by children who went to school to learn how to do most weapons for hunting. Africa is considered the lost continent in technology, even if it is one of the biggest continents. Technology in Africa can only come from outside resources like laboratories or factories. And that would be it about majority of technology in early Africa. Now, Jacqueline will be presenting engineering in Africa.
My name is Jacqueline Jordan, and I will be talking to you today about how Africa has contributed to engineering, or the E in STEM. Africa showed us use of intricate engineering very early on. The Egyptians would build these huge pyramids that would sometimes cover up to 13 acres of land and consisted of over 2.2 million stone blocks. They used these pyramids as tombs for their kings, and they would bury with the kings everything that they thought they would need in the afterlife. Ancient Egyptians and Africans believed that when a king died, part of his soul remained in his body, and that would guide him to the afterlife. Building these pyramids was a way that the early Africans honored their deceased. They would mummify them and again bury them with all their possessions, showing that they were very spiritual, and they used their culture to force them into advancement with engineering. Following the pyramid era, probably around the 12th century or so, and much further south than what Egypt was, these cities started popping up. One of the cities had this 250-meter long and 15,000-ton curved granite wall. These cities were no small feat. They featured huge castle-like compounds with various rooms designed for different tasks like weapon making and ironsmithing and stables, just to name a few. These cities grew and flourished, and by the end of the 13th century, there was an empire of Mali. And this empire was so intricate and impressive. It included what is now Timbuktu and Zimbabwe, which now have grand palaces and mosques and universities. Africa used its culture as a way to push itself into the fields of engineering, and now we're left with these huge phenomenons of pyramids and things like that. Now Patsy is going to take it away with how Africa contributed to the M in STEM.
Hi, my name is Patsy Rodriguez, and today I'll be telling you a little about how Africa contributed to mathematics. The origins of math in Africa go back to prehistoric times. The oldest found artifact, dated around 35,000 BC, was found in Africa. This was a baboon phone, believed to have 29 distinctly marked notches. Mathematicians believe to this day that it was being used to track cycles, perhaps counting days like a calendar. Sometime later, around 8,000 years ago, in present-day Nigeria, the Yoruba people, a tribe in Africa, came up with a base 20 counting system. Now, this was considered amazing and interesting because the base 20 counting system actually requires basic arithmetic to accurately identify numbers. This would later on become known as one of the oldest forms of counting and be referred to when any other counting system came to be. Moving forward to the 18th century, we come to Benjamin Banneker. Now, Mr. Banneker was not a world-renowned mathematician during his living time, but he was one of the very few free African Americans who was self-taught in math and respected for it. One of his most notable inventions or creations was a completely wooden clock that actually worked. Now, he didn't just build this clock out of his head. He actually took apart a clock he borrowed from someone, looked at all the gears, scaled them to size, and built his own version. Now, Africa is not always recognized in math. In fact, most of the time, Africa is not talked about in math or engineering or in any other sort of STEM-related topic. But it must be noted that they did, in fact, give us our first way of counting.
Hello, my name is Aileen Soto. I would like to talk about Africa and its culture. Africa has an enormous cultural and linguistic diversity. One of the main customs are the indigenous music and the traditional African dances that has been transmitted by traditional way both in the north and the south. In this picture, we can observe the traditional dances of Africa, one of the oldest customs of the country. There are also many languages in Africa. There are 10 languages, so the levels of song determine their meaning. They learn the repercussion of African musical melodies and rhythm. In the Africa continent, different instruments are used, among which are drum, bear, flute, and trumpet. In this picture, we can observe the different instruments used in various musical rhythms. Flute. African dancers are important mode communication, and dancer is mask, customer, body painting of various visual media. The basic movements are usually simple, centered on their body, torso, or feet only. Are an example of Africa dancer with mask, customer group, and in 2 or 3 people. When the sun sets at 6:30 in the afternoon, a ritual called sherbet, played every day at that time, is played with bongo, trumpet, and drum instruments. In this picture is an example of the ritual where you can see how the trumpets and drum are used. The ritual is performed for different reasons, such as the worship of God, a national celebration, the death of a member community. This ritual is very important for Africans because they are made to forfeit the last of the ancestors.
We rarely talk about Africa and the amazing discoveries and inventions that they came up with. In science, they came up with a truly natural medicine by using vaccines before they were a norm. And although technology came to Africa late, they are thriving and constantly working towards improvement. Engineering has always been a huge part when it came to building Africa. The amazing pyramids that they show us today in pictures proves that they were far ahead before the time by using just one resource, stone. This enabled them to literally build Africa. Most surprisingly, Africa was the first historically to have a counting system and keep track of time with calendars. So overall, Africa is full of amazing discoveries, inventions, and rich culture.